Good morning and welcome to Ed's World, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. My name is Jay Edgar, and I am joined today by Mr. Behavior himself, Chris Locs.
Hey,
Chris,
what's going on?
welcome to Ed's World.
Thanks, man. This is exciting. Thanks for having me. This is really awesome.
Before we get started here, and this is something I've been trying to add into every show since then, something happened to me this week. Just kind of carries on something. How I outro all my videos and all my podcasts here. I always say, find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. And this week, I got to put that into practice. I was talking about the Nevis Bartlett case, and I was ready to go into that swinging, because the tweet that the Supreme Court put out made it sound like anybody out there would have to prove a negative in any criminal case going forward. And then I read the decision, and I realized that it was something completely different. Some guy got drunk up in Alaska, got arrested for disorderly, got his charges dismissed because reasonable doubt, and then he turned around and sued the cops. So now the cops are the defendants, and they are the ones that are presumed innocent and don't have to prove a negative. So the Supreme Court made the right decision on that, but the way it was worded just made all the libertarian types especially come out swinging on that. So
Yeah, I actually didn't hear about that one, but that sounds pretty crazy. It sounds like one of those confusing cases of exactly what you said. Wording is just twisted around.
I made a video about it, and I talked about Mueller's speech while I was making the video about it too,
hmm
because presumed innocence is something we're going to be talking about.
Oh man, that Mueller stuff, dude. It's crazy because I think that it sounds like from my perspective, actually just like watching more observing people talking about it online, I haven't really super engaged in revealing my opinions on it online. I had one conversation about it maybe, but it really just seems like the entire right is saying case closed and the entire left is saying, but this doesn't mean he's innocent. And it's just like, I feel like at some point you kind of have to walk away.
Right.
I'm of the mind that right now the Democrats not letting this go is probably the biggest gift to the right since, like, I don't know,
Absolutely.
Hillary Clinton was the nominee, right? Because she was terrible. So,
Well, we will be talking about that in the opening topic here. Before we get started here, I have one brief announcement to make.
oh,
I'm working on some things right now, trying to figure out some of my, not streaming obviously, because I don't stream, but some of my recording settings. But I'm going to be starting a second channel where I'm going to be doing Let's Plays. So I did a test video for New Vegas. It turned out well. I was able to talk through the whole video, which was what I was most nervous about.
awesome.
My computer can handle running OBS and New Vegas at the same time, so
Fantastic. Did you get OBS Studio or Streamlabs?
I have OBS Studio.
Okay.
But
I honestly would recommend Streamlabs, but we could talk about that after.
yeah, well, the only problem that I had was when I switched the resolutions there, it switched on my screen too, so I wasn't going full screen onto everything. So that's one of the bugs I have to work out before I
Okay.
launch it.
Gotcha.
But that will be coming down the pipes.
Sweet.
We have a full show going on today, as I said before, as we'd already talked about a little bit in the beginning of this. Robert Mueller made an 8-minute speech making his resignation. Everybody in the world had a different take on that, and they got a lot of information out of 8 minutes that I sure as hell didn't get.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk a
Mm-hmm.
bit about that. Donald Trump announced a tariff to try and end the battle at the border. So we will talk about that, where it goes in the future, and if that is indeed Mexico paying for the wall. As we always do on this show, we will be talking about the packed clown car that is 2020, including some comments by Swalwell and some analysis of the fact that many people have sworn to have a woman running as their vice president and what that could mean. We'll talk about that, and we'll answer the 3 questions that we always answer on this show. On a darker note, there was a shooting in Virginia this past week. It fell out of the news as predicted very, very quickly, but there were some things that we need to touch on to this, including the fact that statistically this was the deadliest shooting of 2019, and we'll talk about that. And it looks like the abortion story has not finished yet, because now they're talking about some boycotts in any state that would dare to put out an abortion law and exercise their freedom from the federal government. So we will talk about that. It is going to be all of this and more on Ed's World. Thanks for watching this on YouTube, and BitChute. If you haven't subscribed already, be sure you reach down and hit that subscribe button. That helps us move up the algorithms. And while you're down there, hit that like button. That helps tell YouTube what people should be watching. If you are listening back to this on an audio platform or would like to in the future, we are on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, and we can add a new hosting service at any time we get requested. So we will look into that. Feel free to email me or leave it in the comments. And if you are over on iTunes, make sure you leave a 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the charts. After a lengthy introduction, it's time to talk about the most important part of Ed's world. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, first of all, again, thank you for having me. This is really fun. I really enjoy doing these kinds of online interactions. It's cool to, meet through Twitter and get this going. But yeah, a little bit about me. Chris Locs, aka Mr. Behavior. I have two names because so the Mr. Behavior name comes from an old band that I used to be in when I was in high school. I'm a musician. I still play music a lot. I have a band that I'm in currently. We're called Vinyl Spectrum, and we're very active. But back when I was about 15, I was in this band called Mr. Behavior, and I was fronting this band and writing most of the songs. And I kind of liked the name. So even after we broke up, I kept using the name as like my online tags for gaming. As you can see, I'm wearing a Mega Man and a Mega Man hat and shirt. So I'm really into gaming. But I've been using that moniker as my gaming handle for about 15 years now. So I decided, just to kind of keep using it. And Locs came from music also. When I moved to the Bay Area where I live now, I'm originally from New Jersey, but when I moved to the Bay Area, I started playing music in the scene. And I used to wear sunglasses all the time when I played in this like country rock band called Outlaws and Preachers. And the lead singer started calling me Locs because it's like a kind of Southern California like slang for like sunglasses from like, gangster rap in the 90s and stuff. So he would call me Locs, and it kind of just stuck. So people have been calling me Chris Locs this entire time that I've been living in California, almost 10 years. And so I'm kind of just bringing those things together. Yeah, I do like I said, I play music. I have my own podcast. I do all of those kinds of things. So that's why this is really exciting to do. That's a little bit about me. You could learn more maybe a little later.
Yeah. Well, we'll learn a little bit more right now, of course, because I always want to ask the guests, because everybody's got a different journey about how they got over to the left side of the screen or wherever they end their journey up. But it's always interesting to see where people go. So how did you decide to get into alternative media, like doing your podcast?
Oh, yeah. So that's actually kind of a longer story. So I did... like I said, I moved from New Jersey to California about 10 years ago. It was 2010, so 9 years ago, almost 10. And I was just playing music a lot in these random bands. And I was going to this place called Music City Rehearsal, which is just, it's a rehearsal space in San Francisco. And I was practicing there a lot. And I eventually, after practicing there for a couple years, I eventually started working there. And when I started there, the owner had this idea that he wanted to kind of expand the brand and, do like a radio show and have a venue and do all these kinds of things. And they're still kind of pushing on that. But when I got there, the radio wasn't really anything. It was just kind of a playlist that went on loop. And so I started creating podcast programs for Music City Radio. And I did that for like, a couple months. And, eventually, I left that company. But I didn't do another podcast for a really long time because I had something in my mind kind of told me that I needed to get paid or something. I don't really know where I was at, but I got a job that ended up being pretty good for me. And, then I was able to like invest in more equipment, and I started another podcast. This was called It's My Turn to Talk. And at that point I was like still like, I guess, blue pilled, if you will. And so if you go back and listen to those episodes, even the ones that I did for Music City, like a lot of the current events that I chose to talk about were very like, very centered around, racial identity and things like that. And so I did about 6 episodes or 7 episodes of It's My Turn to Talk. And then I just got, something just told me that I wasn't doing it correctly. And so a couple years went by, like fast forward, like 2016 happens, a couple of years go by, and I got red pilled, like super hardcore. And I think it was Steven Crowder that actually like was the catalyst, because I didn't realize that I had grown up with these kind of sort of like conservative, I guess, values. And I wasn't really being told that these values really existed in the media, right? I had unplugged myself from the mainstream media when I moved out here and started like playing music, because I was really only listening to my friends' music. So I got kind of outside of this, like the mainstream. And I think that kind of primed me to be able to accept alternative media. Right. And so I think at some point I saw like a Steven Crowder video, and I didn't even realize that he was conservative. I just thought he was super funny. And I kept watching. I realized eventually that he was conservative, and I started going down this rabbit hole. I saw he had like Ben Shapiro on his show, and he had like Dave Rubin and like a bunch of random people. And I started listening more to them, and I started thinking like, wait a second, I used to do this, and now I feel like I have a reason to talk about things. Like it actually is my turn, right? And so I guess I kind of got inspired by like the intellectual dark web sort of people to like relaunch a podcast. And the original idea for the show that I have now, Locs Takes, is it was me and a friend from New Jersey, a guy from college that I went to. I went to Montclair State, and we started reconnecting over the years, and we realized we kind of switched political ideologies. Like he was very conservative in college, and I was very liberal, and now it's vice versa. And so we were like, "Yo, you know, it'd be cool if we had a show together where we talked, through issues." From either sides of the spectrum. And then we also wanted to talk about dating. So it was like a really weird, like hodgepodge of ideas. And I did about 14 episodes with him. And at some point he told me that he doesn't respect, or like he like was dehumanizing people who wear MAGA hats. And I kind of was like, that's kind of ridiculous. I think that's crazy. Especially, I think we were talking about maybe Covington had just happened or something.
Okay.
And so he told me that he didn't respect people who wore MAGA hats. And so I said, well, you know what? I'm going to buy one. So I did. I went and I bought a MAGA hat. And he told me that he wouldn't respect me anymore. So I said, look, well, I'm paying for this whole show. Like I pay for all the promotion, and I, edit everything, and I do all. So if you're not going to respect me, I don't want to work with you. And so I kind of cut ties with him there. And now I'm up to episode 33. So it's been 18 episodes by myself, and I'll bring on a guest and stuff. You ought to come on the show, Ed.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that off camera.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, that's pretty much how I got back into it. It's like I said, it was a longer story. I was unplugged a while ago. It became really easy for me to accept like other ideas, and then Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro happened, and I got inspired.
Well, it's good, and it's always good to unplug from the system. I mean, there are so many people out there that are so desperately dependent on the system that they can't even imagine the world without it. So
yeah, it's really the Matrix, man. It is.
Well, with that there, if you're satisfied with that, let's talk about Mueller for a
Woo!
bit. Now, you had said that off mic that this is something that you kind of knew a bit about and had looked into. Just to brief the audience there, for those who actually might not know, on Wednesday morning, Robert Mueller took to the stage. It had been announced earlier on in the day that he was going to. He gave an 8-minute speech, and there were so many people out there that thought that this speech was going to be the final nail in the coffin of the president, so the entire world was waiting with bated breath. He said some very controversial things in the speech, but what I took out of this and what I made a solo video on was not necessarily the speech itself. It was the fact that everyone seemed to hear what they needed to hear out of this speech, and I didn't know there was that much information in 8 minutes. When did you see this? Did you see the whole speech at all, or?
I did actually. So I remember I was talking to a friend when it was live, and I watched the end of it. I got to the end of it, and he mentioned that he wasn't going to be taking questions, and I was typing to my friend, and I was like, this guy's not even going to take questions. Like, is this guy serious? And then I went back and I watched it again. Like, oh, what happened? You have a cat?
No, I've got one window that I was meaning to close before we went live there, because the window doesn't hold up by itself all the time, and it just slid down.
And that's why.
I knew it was going to happen on air one time.
Hey, you know what? We're doing it live. No, so I watched the show, or I watched the speech. I think a couple days later or something like that. Listened through it, and then I heard some people's analysis of it. I mean, like I was saying earlier, like I think the entire right is kind of just saying case closed, and the left is saying, but he's not innocent, which is kind of the same thing that was happening after Barr's report came out initially, anyway, right?
Hmm.
It's like, the left is just like, he's covering, and this doesn't mean he's exonerated, and the right's like, victory, and it's like, I mean, the truth is definitely probably somewhere closer to the middle. I
Right.
mean, from what I can tell, and I mean, even like Mueller himself said, like, I think he was like, if we had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. And we did not make a determination as to whether or not the president committed a crime. It's kind of like about the story you were talking about earlier. It's such a weird way to phrase it. Like, I don't think that Robert Mueller's job is to investigate like whether or not find evidence of him committing a crime. It's or find evidence of him being innocent. Like, you have to find evidence in order to, I don't know. It was just a lot of weird. Don't you look for evidence that a crime was committed and that a crime wasn't committed generally if you're investigating?
Yeah, the phraseology is always all suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of
Right.
law.
Exactly. So it just seems weird. It seems like it's like, wait, so you're looking for evidence that he didn't do anything? And then it becomes really weird and subjective where like people look at it. It's like, okay, I didn't read the whole report because I don't have that kind of time and I'm not getting paid for it. But
Right.
from what I understand, like, yeah, Trump had a lot of like bad behavior, right? He was just acting kind of irrationally. He was upset a lot and fulminating a lot.
Hmm.
And I don't think that amounts to any sort of like obstruction, in my opinion. I mean, especially since the guy comes out and he says, well, he didn't do anything. People are like, now the left is talking about, well, he still obstructed justice. And it's all like, wait, okay, so how is he going to obstruct justice if nothing happened? My one friend gave me this one analogy where he says, well, if the cops are trying to pull somebody over and you're not the one who they're trying to pull over, don't you still pull over for them so they get out of the way? And I'm like, I mean, I guess, but I'm not the one that the cop is looking for. Like,
Right.
I don't understand that analogy really. And these are the kinds of things that people on the left are actually saying.
Oh, absolutely. And again, that's part of where this came from when I realized that every single pundit in the world took exactly what they needed to out of it. Like you said,
Yeah.
the first idea out there was that all the left pundits, like The View and MSNBC, were saying that
Hmm.
this proves that the president did something because Robert Mueller said that they couldn't say for sure that he didn't. Well, that's not how the legal system works. And if you're going to try and change the legal system like that, you're changing the legal system into criminalizing political differences because you no
Right.
longer have to prove your innocence.
Right.
Well, you never had to prove your innocence, but they no longer have to prove your guilt. They can just say that you're
Yeah. Yeah.
guilty and toss you in the cell and oh, now you can't speak out to anything anymore.
Right, exactly. And the funny thing is too, it's the fact that Mueller went out there and was like, Russia has definitely interfered with the election, and it's like, okay, sure. There were like Russian agents pretending to be Americans on Facebook, fucking with people's opinions. That's possible, right?
Yeah.
But I have serious doubts that and like Trump's campaign had anything to do with that, because you can't find evidence of that, and then B, that has never happened before since the advent of Facebook and social media. Like, have these people never been on the internet before? Like, I don't really understand.
Well, some of the people in Congress definitely haven't, I don't believe. I'm sure some of their staffers are doing all of their tweeting for them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just so weird. It's like I just have serious doubts in general that this is the first time a foreign entity has attempted to interfere or influence our elections. Like, and I mean, I don't want to go too far into conspiracy theories because but sometimes I'm like, well, how do you know that like we didn't have like Iran didn't help like Obama get elected or something, dude? Like, nobody's looking at that.
Well,
I didn't, you know.
it's not just the left either when we're talking about every pundit being able to take away what they need to take away
Right.
from this. I mean, I was listening to Limbaugh the same morning that this all came out because
Mhm.
I go to work right after the speech was over. I'm I listened to Limbaugh on the way, and he kept saying, "Well, this means that Robert Mueller was just trying to turn around and get the president, and he's nothing but a Democrat operative, and he's trying to change this into an impeachment." No, that didn't mean any of that.
Yeah. Well, he did say, like, what was he said, the Constitution requires a process other than the criminal justice system to formally accuse a sitting president of wrongdoing. So in my mind, and I might have to agree with Rush a little bit there, in my mind, that's like a soft signal for impeachment. That's like, Congress, go ahead, do your thing, you know? Like, kind of like what does the left like to call it, a dog whistle?
Yep, absolutely a dog whistle.
You know? I don't know. The thing that's really weird though is there's the whole like Department of Justice policies that don't really allow you to like convict a sitting president or whatever. And so what I don't really understand is that Mueller mentions that, but like if you weren't going to be able to find like an obstruction of justice based on DOJ policies, what the fuck was the point of doing this in the first place? I don't understand. Like I'm just so confused. Like I listened to it and then I read through like the transcript and I really don't get it. I don't understand. Okay, so you're basically saying to me that there was no point in you doing any of this.
Yeah, that is the weird thing too. Is yeah, he definitely does frame it as the fact that there was no point to any of this, which bothers me and any of itself. But I was one of the first people to say, just throw your cards on the table because I want to read through the financial statement and see what this all cost.
Well, you know what's funny about that is I actually mentioned that to someone. I think I was like one of the conversations I had about it was like, dude, if you are a taxpayer and these people spent, which I'm a taxpayer, you're a taxpayer.
Absolutely.
Most of the people I talk to about this, even the ones on the left, are taxpayers, unless they're avoiding it. But if you're a taxpayer and the government spends 2 years of your money to come up with absolutely nothing, like, wouldn't you be kind of pissed? And somebody said to me that the Mueller investigation made more money than it cost, and I was like, I don't really understand that argument. I haven't really like typed that into Google, but I don't. How could the investigation have made money? Is it like media or like what? What is he talking about?
Well, there is that. Absolutely is. I know that's been something that the media has been using to sell commercials for the last 2 years, but a lot of these big media firms were going to be selling those commercials no matter what.
Yeah, that's exactly, exactly. So I don't know. That argument kind of baffles me. The whole it made more money than it spent. I'm like, even if it did, like I still would be I'm still angry that my tax dollars went to something that's useless. Like, to be honest, I go back to like I listen to you mentioned. It's funny you mentioned you listen to Rush Limbaugh. I have a friend who keeps telling me to listen to Rush because I listen to Ben Shapiro all the time, and he's like, "No, you have to listen to Rush. He's like the original." And I was like, "Okay, well maybe I'll try." But I was listening to Shapiro. I think he was on. He was on Bill Maher, like 2 years ago or something, or a year ago, and he mentioned, and I completely agree with this. If there is evidence of collusion or criminal activity, I'm happy to throw the book at the president. I'm happy to. You know what I'm saying? But like until you come up with something, then there's nothing. Like I don't understand how I'm supposed to be on this like impeach Trump train when A, you guys can't find anything and you're spending all my tax dollars around it, and B, like I haven't really seen any of the terrible things happening that Democrats said were going to happen after 2016.
Well, I'm not the kind of person that'll recommend everybody listen to Rush all the time because, I mean, I'm considered to be to the right, and he is way too far to the right for even me.
Yeah, really?
Oh, yeah. For most of the time. And I knew that, too. I mean, I knew that no matter who the presidential nominee wound up being last year on the Republican side, Rush was going to back him no matter what. I don't think he was into Trump right to begin with either.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of people weren't into Trump. And my buddy who actually recommended Rush, he always criticizes me because like I said, I listen to Ben Shapiro, and he's like, well, Ben Shapiro wasn't even on the Trump train. And I'm like, I wasn't on the Trump train. Like, I know Ben Shapiro liked Ted Cruz or something, but I was like, I thought I was a Democrat at that point in my life. Like, I really did. And I think a lot of it had to do with fucking cartoons. And I'll tell you this: the Animaniacs cartoon back in the 90s has in the intro has Bill Clinton in it playing the saxophone.
Yep.
It says Wacko packs away the snacks while Bill Clinton plays the sax. I did not stand a chance when I had all of these messages telling me the Democrats were cool, right?
Yep.
You know, and then on top of that, I'm black, right? So they're supposed to be like for me or something like that. You know, so I wasn't on the Trump train either. So when people criticize people like Rush or Shapiro for not being down with Trump initially, I can't really blame that, especially since I was on the complete other side.
Right. Absolutely. And yes, I do remember that from the Animaniacs.
Yeah,
Because I
we
grew up
all
in a
do.
union house, so I'm under the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So the biggest takeaway that I have out of this, and the way that I looked at this speech, was the idea that Mueller he knows that, like you had said, you don't have time to sit down and read the whole report. Nobody has time for that. The majority of people weren't going to sit down and read the whole report. They're getting the snippets that the pundits want them to hear read back to them and sanitized and twisted in a certain way to make the story fit their narrative. Mueller's speech, as he retired, as he closed the special counsel's office, as he went back to the private life, was him telling the people what was actually in the report and what he wanted them to hear. Not what MSNBC, Fox, or CNN wanted them to hear. That's what I saw from this.
I think I would agree. I would 100% agree with what you just said.
But given the fact that now we have a non-exoneration of the president who is presumed innocent, we will sit back now and talk a little bit about something else that makes our president a horrible demon.
You mean in the eyes of the mainstream media?
And everybody
And the
else.
left?
Yeah. So this past week, the president made an announcement. He said that there was going to be big news coming on the immigration front, and he made his big news. The president is no stranger to big news on the immigration front, obviously, with his idea to ship illegal immigrants to sanctuary cities or build the Great and Glorious Wall. Well, this past week, he announced that if Mexico doesn't do something about immigration in their country to try and keep people from leaving and fleeing to the U.S., he is going to put a 5% tariff on the country of Mexico. And this is only to start because I believe it is on a monthly basis. The tariff is supposed to go up by 5 more percent as they go. Now, my first thought when I heard this was, is this going to be the promise that we got, that we are going to build a great and glorious wall and Mexico is going to pay for it? And they're going to pay for it through taxation, because that would be essentially what this would be.
Yep.
What do you think about all of this?
Well, okay, so I read a little bit about this because the tariff part is something that I generally don't really think about as much, because so I'm generally of the side that like tariffs I don't think are inherently good, right? I think that they can be useful, but I don't think that they're an inherent good. And I've actually like worked at a company before that was recently. I don't work at that company anymore, but this company was negatively impacted by like a lot of the steel tariffs and things like that went into effect last year.
Okay.
And so that sucked, right? So I'm not necessarily a fan. However, when it comes to trying to incentivize Mexico to kind of get their shit together in terms of immigration, I don't necessarily disagree that might be an effective strategy. And again, it would fulfill the promise that Mexico was going to pay for the wall. I know it's a roundabout way to doing it, but I was reading about like I think who's the acting chief of staff, Mulvaney or something. Okay, yeah. So I was reading him talking about how the Mexican government needs to seal its borders with Guatemala and crack down on terrorist organizations, make Mexico a little bit more safer. Because the thing that people don't realize, and this is something that I think a lot of people on the left don't understand, is that people who are immigrating from Southern and Central America can claim asylum in Mexico before they get to the United States. They're not doing that.
No, they want to get here.
Right, but why are they not doing that? And a lot of it has to do with, in my opinion, Mexico's not really a very safe place to apply for asylum, especially if you're coming from somewhere like Guatemala, where whoever you're running from can just find you because Mexico has weak border security with them. So I do think that I generally think that this might make sense if you can say, hey, Mexico, get your shit together with immigration so that we don't have to take all of these migrants and you can take some of these migrants. Because at the end of the day, they just want to get out of where they are. So they should, if you're actually seeking asylum, you should just want to get out of where you are. Right. And that kind of puts you in a position where now it's like, well, why are these people who on the left who don't understand that these people are able to seek asylum in Mexico? Well, then you have to ask yourself, why are they not doing that? Is it just because Mexico's not safe? That might be one reason. Or is it because they're not actually trying to seek asylum? Is that another reason? Maybe Mexico needs to get their border security together first so that we don't even have to deal with the overflow. And I think that that's what Trump is trying to accomplish. So I think that makes sense to me, right? But I also don't know like how difficult it is for Mexico to change their border, their border security. I don't really know much about Mexican border security.
Well, that I'm gonna bypass the other question I had for this right away, but because you started talking about this, but you brought up the one option and something that Mexico can do about this. That was one of the main questions that I had for this. I generally agree with the president on immigration, but that was one of the first questions that I had about this policy: is what exactly is Mexico going to do to prevent the immigration? And I know you brought
Right.
up the one part of stopping the channel coming from Central America, places like Venezuela, which is collapsing, through Guatemala and up
Right.
to here. But I mean, what other options do they have on the table to try and not to do any of this?
War? No, I don't know, man. Like, because I mean, there's like a crazy flow of migrants coming up through. A lot of people are thinking that the border wall is really just about keeping Mexicans out. It's
Right.
really not. Like, there's a ton of people coming through that border that are not Mexicans, and so uh, I don't know. I think a lot of it has to like doesn't Mexico have like generally pretty tough, like if you try to immigrate there, it's pretty difficult versus
Yes, absolutely. And that's been one of the arguments that we've been having for the last couple of years, is that we don't have a strong immigration policy, but Mexico does.
right. Right. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know, they need to be a little bit better about vetting people and getting people like naturalized. But, I think a lot of these people just don't like, I don't know if Mexico can really affect that because a lot of these people just, like we were saying earlier, want to come to the United States and they're going to come to the United States or try to hell or high water.
Plane, train, or automobile.
Right.
But that's, that's been absolutely one of the biggest things that's been weighing on my mind. What are they going to do? Well, short of putting their own military up on the border and saying, no, don't go there. This is going to cost us too much money. And one of the realizations that I had about this, you brought this up when you talked about the tariff and the goods and people being affected by it, the jobs that are affected by it on our state. But in reality, the jobs on our side are not affected as much as they are in the countries that are getting tariffed.
Yeah.
I work with automotive parts, with heavy truck parts on my regular 9 to 5, and brake drums for heavy trucks was one of the things that was affected by. It was affected by the tariffs because we sell an aftermarket brand of brake drums that's made with Chinese steel. They were $60 when we started getting them out the door to the customer, and we've had to raise them to 67 because of the tariffs. But the other side of that is we can still go and shop around to another country, and
Yeah.
China was not our biggest supplier. Mexico is not our biggest supplier, and we have options as to where they buy from. With China and with Mexico, we are their biggest customers.
Yeah. That's
So
true. They're not ours. Yeah.
Yeah, if the flow starts going and starts to dry up from them, that's going to affect their economy more than us having to pay $7 more a brake drum.
That's actually really true. And I mean, I think that I mean, the cost does get passed on to consumer in some way, and people will just like complain, like people are talking about like avocados are going to be 5 or 10 cents more and all this kind of stuff. What's particularly that's a huge thing in California because Californians don't seem to be able to live without avocados for some reason. Um,
Can't you
but
grow avocados in Mexico?
you can grow them.
I thought those grew in your climate just the same as they did in Mexico.
I mean, I don't know if we grow them in California. I'm pretty sure we import most of ours from Mexico, but maybe Southern California. I don't know. That's something I'm ignorant of. But I do know that we do import a bunch of them, and so I don't. But that being said, like we are, I mean, generally we're kind of a wealthy nation. I think people can afford to spend 10 cents or $7 even, to be honest. As a general rule, I mean, I recognize that there are poor people, but I don't think that like a price hike on some stuff that we need temporarily while we figure some trade negotiations out with countries that aren't going to screw us over is gonna break that many pockets.
Well, and that's the part of it too. I mean, yes, it does affect the customer, and I understand that, but there's a balance to. It is almost political on that aspect because that is reinforcing good behavior out of these countries
Yeah.
that we're not good with. I'm sure that avocados grow somewhere else in the world.
They've
I'm
got to
ignorant
wait.
to
Well,
that stuff.
I'm gonna look this up right now while we're talking.
Okay, but I mean, we can get avocados theoretically from somewhere else. I do believe they do grow in Southern California. I can't quote me on that, but I mean, steel. We have so many other countries that we can get steel from as well.
Yeah.
And I know the incentive for putting the tariff on the steel was to get more of it made here, which is a lot more expensive. But
So you're right. There are some avocados grown in California, and California accounts for most of the U.S. avocado production. But the other places are Florida and Hawaii. That being said, Mexico is the top producing avocado country in the world.
I kind of figured it was going to be the case for that. But
Yeah.
I mean, we have options to pick up some of the slack, and I know it's
Yeah.
more costly to get American stuff for that because of the labor involved, but
Yeah, exactly.
it's going to give in Mexico before it gives here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Have you ever seen Razorfist's video on why we need the wall?
Why we need the wall?
Yeah. This is
No,
from
I
a couple
haven't,
years ago,
but
like right when the president was elected.
I did not see it, but I should.
Yeah.
I think that we do need the wall, though. I mean, I've been pretty convinced, just in general. I mean, I think that a lot of the narrative around the wall that's negative, particularly from the left, has to do with this idea that it's a racist wall,
Right.
which I don't really understand because I don't think that it's inherently racist to want to protect people inside of your country from people outside of your country, especially since, like I said earlier, a lot of the people coming through that border aren't even Mexican or brown. Like there are people from other places that get through the Mexico border because they know it's easy.
Yeah. And Mexicans are not inherently brown either. I mean,
Right.
a lot of them do have that rich Aztec blood through them, but
Right.
so do
Right.
many of the Cherokee of the Southern Plains as well.
Right. I mean, I think people tend to think of Mexicans as sort of a monolith of just being like brown Latino people. Like, and like, yeah, I mean, I used to have a girlfriend who was from Mexico and she was blonde and blue eyed.
Yeah.
You would never know she was Mexican until she started talking.
And I worked with a woman who was Mexican for a while, and her skin hue was about the same as yours.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially I think Latin people in general, that's the thing about like, even like US race statistics is like, I think it's like white people make up 60% of the US unless you count white Hispanics, in which case they're like 77%.
Yep.
And then you can do the same thing with like black people and black Hispanics and it like inflates the number.
Yeah.
Because Latin people can be anything, you know?
Well, yeah, and most of them originate from Spain, Portugal area.
Right.
It's not a race. They're as much of a
Right,
melting pot
right.
in Mexico as we are here.
Right, right, exactly. But a lot of people are ignorant to that stuff, and they just kind of see, the narrative that's perpetuated. And also, I mean, isn't that the racist thing? Like, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you're seeing you're seeing people as like a monolith, and you're just like you're looking at Mexico, you're like, oh, all the people down there are brown and poor. That's racist. What?
Well, where I was going with Razor Fist video when I was talking about that is the point
Yeah.
that he brought up was the fact that, and I actually looked into this after I saw the video, is that Mexico is sitting on one of the biggest oil fields in the world.
Oh shit.
Bigger than ours, bigger than Norway's, slightly bigger than Norway's. Norway's is smaller, but not by much.
Okay.
Bigger than the Middle East. Mexico is sitting on one of the biggest supplies of oil in the world, and they have no business being as poor as they are.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all government. It's all the corruption and the cartels in the
Mhm.
government is what's causing a lot of this. And the people have nothing. So I do understand them wanting to be here, but I mean,
Yeah.
is that one of the options that Mexico has on the table is clean up the government so nobody's running?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should, like I said, war, man. Maybe we should just go in there and topple that regime and install something good. A lot of people are anti-war and stuff, but I think that now that you lay that case out, maybe give some oil back to the people and let them control their own destinies.
Or pump the oil and put the money into the economy, one of the two.
Yeah, I'm on board with either one, but they got to fix that.
Oh, don't do a planned economy, though, because we saw how that worked with Venezuela. But,
Yeah, God, that's a terrible, terrible situation.
well, given the fact that we've talked so much about Mexico and the wall, I think it's time for us to talk about the people that want to try and succeed the executive branch
Oh
and try and
Lord.
prevent the wall from going in place.
Oh
And it is
Lord.
time, of course. I need to get some sounders into this because we need a sounder to start this. Because I'm going to be doing this until November.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
is time for 2020 Watch. So let's start out with somebody from your state over there.
Oh no, is it Kamala?
No,
Oh
no, but
shit.
we'll talk about her, I'm sure,
Is it-
towards the end of it.
Okay.
It's Eric.
Oh God, that guy, dude. Okay. Oh,
So Eric
man.
Swalwell was on Town Hall this past week, and he had to say, of course, that he wants to be the president, but nobody should really care what he wants because he is just another white guy. But we should, for whatever reason, still elect him president.
No. Okay. Okay. Wait a second. I have to say something.
This is your
about
district, isn't it? I just realized that.
Yeah. No, he is. So I have to say something about this guy. So my buddy, actually went to. So he like did a rally at like a high school in my buddy's hometown recently. This was like, I want to say 2 months ago, and my friend invited me to go. I said I didn't want to go. And then I looked into him after because I was like, who is this guy? Like, whatever. I don't even know that he exists, you know? And I was like, I kind of wrote it off. Then I started seeing him kind of in the media all the time. I think the first thing that I saw, he said something like on Twitter, he said something like, do you know how many times women is mentioned in the Constitution? 0. And you're like, wait a second, men isn't mentioned in the Constitution either. What the hell is this guy talking about? Has this guy read the Constitution? So that was weird. And then I saw exactly what I saw him. Well, he's been pandering about the being white thing. God, I don't know I'm sorry that you guys are. All these white guys just apologizing for being white. I was with a friend the other day, and I got told to tell me, you guys got to stop apologizing for being white, man. This is crazy shit. This guy, I think he was on Vice or something, and this woman asked him, why should another white guy be president? And I swear to God, this guy goes, white guys who don't understand the experiences of minorities should not be president, but I do. And I will pass the mic to people who, and it's like, wait, you're going to, why are we going to elect you? Why wouldn't we just elect, like, you're going to pass the mic to Black Lives Matter lady? Why don't we just elect her? If I don't understand why he's even running. This is honestly the weirdest campaign for president I've ever seen. Did you see the he did a Twitter video, and it was like, help me, raise money, and he's like got his baby and he's like cleaning his baby's ass, and he's like, he's gonna clean up Washington, and he like throws away a diaper like all cool. Like, what is going on?
I have not seen that one. That I heard about him campaigning with his dog Penny, but I did not hear about the kid. That's something I'll have to look into off mic.
Dude, it's the funniest thing ever. I don't really understand how this guy's getting so much media attention too, because it's like he's got one voter, and it's like his mom, probably.
Well, he's been in my crosshairs for quite a while because
Yeah.
this is the same representative who wrote an op-ed saying that he was going to come out and confiscate guns and have a massive buyback that was
Oh.
mandatory.
Yep.
And then when conservative commenter Joe Biggs went and pointed that out, saying that the government or that the people would essentially have to go to war with the government to keep their guns, Swalwell went on Twitter and said, "It'll be a short war, my friend. The government has nukes."
Whoa, did he really say that?
Yes, he did. I did a whole video on that back in the summer.
Holy shit. Okay, that's pretty insane. So he's basically saying that if he became president, he could try to take my guns. I don't know. That's ridiculous, man. Are you serious?
Yeah, so this guy's been on my radar for quite a while before he even announced that he was running for president, but
No way. No way. That's wild. I mean, yeah, this guy is bizarre. Like, I don't think he understands that, like, okay, first of all, when you try to fuck with the Bill of Rights, we have a problem. We have a huge problem. Like, and I don't think that a lot of people even understand how fundamental and how important that document actually is. Like, we've gotten so far away from like the founding, concepts, and we're arguing about things. Okay, my take on this, and this is probably why this guy thinks he can say this, is that the war between the left and the right has really become like an inability to reconcile and understand the meaning of and agree on the meaning of life, liberty, and property, right? Obviously, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness is in our founding documents, but like it's really life, liberty, and property. It's like the whole Lockean shit, right?
mm-hmm.
And so we don't agree on what those things are. And so for someone to come out and say, well, the government is just going to nuke you. Dude, that's some fucking Beijing 1989 shit. Are you kidding me right now? This guy's going to like talking about, wow. And he thinks we're going to vote for him? Wild. Wild.
Well, I mean, of course we're going to vote for him because his other statement this past week is that he swears up and down, no matter what, if he gets onto the nomination or if he gets down far enough into the nomination where he starts to talk about it, he's going to nominate a woman to be the vice president.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I get up and I listen to Styx, Hex, and Hammer 666 every morning when I have my coffee. That guy is great. But
yeah.
the thing that he brought up to this, and I've been watching that, I'm sure you've seen the video already too, is he's analyzing that if like a Swalwell or a Beto or somebody, or even a Biden, were to nominate a woman to be the vice president, and like say it's Biden and he dies, which statistically is possible that he could do in office. The first woman president is going to ascend to the presidency without being elected. And what is that going to do to the feminists that say that we need to have a woman as a president?
Well, I mean, the feminists don't really seem to understand the concept of earning stuff anyway. So, I mean, they'll probably just be happy about that, to be completely honest. I can't help but think about Sarah Palin when people are talking about, oh, well, he's going to choose a woman run. I mean, like, everybody was dumping on this woman super hard, dude, back in the day. And I think that this is such a weird, like, it's just such a weird, like, 180 almost. It's like, so you're just going to be satisfied with that, but you're also okay with, like, dumping on somebody because they're on the wrong side of the political aisle. I mean, nobody was on board with this woman, even though she, I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily really like her that much, but like, she is a woman and nobody seemed to be happy about that. I can't help but like think back to that a little bit. But anyway, going back to like the whether or not if somebody dies in office, so like if Joe Biden picked like Kamala Harris or something like that,
God help us.
And he died. Yeah, I mean, I think that the feminists and the far leftists would take that as a victory, and they'd be like, "Yeah, we got our first woman president." I don't think that they would. I think that would ruin the chances of a woman ever being president ever again, though. To be completely honest with you.
Well, there's that, and honestly, I think that would be the same thing, though, too. I think that would be a scab. You're on the fence as to whether or not that would be a victory or if that would be an asterisk. Because
yeah.
And I think that would be ammunition to the Trump campaign for the presidency as well to come out and say, well, this person has a chance of dying in office, so then the woman's going to be president, and it's not going to be an earned position; it'll be an appointed position.
Right.
I think that hurts the candidate.
I think that that's true, and you don't think? I mean, Trump would absolutely roast for that. I mean, for sure. The guy's a stand-up comedian. He's going to take every jab he can.
And that does mention to the other thing that I have in the show notes here, and that is the fact that while we're talking about the fact that Biden could stroke out in office and appoint the first female president of the United States, he is continuing to lead against all odds, and he is leading hard.
Yeah, that's actually surprising to me because Biden is a weirdo. I feel like he's a giraffe on roller skates. I think I heard Ben Shapiro say one time, which is true. I mean, it's like the guy gaffes all the time. The guy cannot keep his hands to himself. Do you see that whole thing with the 10-year-old girl?
I did.
And it's like the thing that he said, you're as smart as you are good looking. What? What are you saying? This is a child. What are you doing? What are you doing? Um, but like actually over the past couple of days, like since that happened, he's been kind of quiet. I think that so I was listening to Shapiro the other day and he was saying that honestly, if Biden just stays quiet for another year, he could probably just sneak in and grab the nomination. But if he keeps going out there and making gaffes, then he probably would lose. But you're saying that he's ahead. So I haven't even seen those poll numbers.
So, according to Real Clear Politics, Biden
Okay.
is 13 points ahead of Bernie Sanders, who is the second
Okay.
runner up at this point.
Okay.
Which part of the flaw, and I've heard people talk about this as well, of the fact that there are so many candidates running right now is that Biden could take the nomination right now, especially going into Super Tuesday and some of the first elections where everybody's going to be on the ticket, of course.
Hmm.
He can go into Super Tuesday and start to walk away with it without having the majority in anything because there are so many people that are running right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, it's also you got you. I think that the Democrats are kind of doing themselves a disservice by running so many people right now because you have like people like Kirsten Gillibrand, for example, who's she's not going anywhere. Like what the hell? Like why are you even trying? Or actually, you know what? I don't want to shift too much from Biden, but I do have to mention the guy. What's his name? John Delaney. Is that right? The guy he just did a speech in San Francisco, I believe, and he was talking about how socialism is not the right way to go. He made a whole speech about how Medicare for all isn't smart policy, and he's talking to Californians, and he gets booed. He straight
Right.
up gets booed. He's like, I think he's from Massachusetts. Am I correct there? I think he is. Let me look it up.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any of this here, but that is something I could see. And I lived in Massachusetts for a couple of years, as you can possibly see behind me. I live.
Maryland. Yes, I can see. Yeah, Maryland. He's from Maryland.
Okay.
And he like recently just did like a speech. It's on Real Clear too. You should check it out. But like, yeah, he was at a convention in California, and he basically said, "We need smart policy decisions, and Medicare for all is not it." And everybody goes, "Boo!" And it's like, yo, you guys are just giving this away by like putting all of your worst up there. Although I don't, I mean, while I agree with him, obviously I agree with with him that he's trying to do reasonable, but he doesn't realize that like especially in California, the Democratic base has gotten so radical that they do not want to hear anything like that, and so Biden being quiet, like I was saying, is probably his best bet because Biden isn't actually a radical. I understand that like I mean, he might have some things that I don't agree with him on, but he's not going to be super radical in terms of policy, and that's not really popular in the Democratic wing right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, in 2008, I wasn't ready to jump over to the right yet. I
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
didn't want to get on the back of neocon John McCain, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
also
yeah.
wasn't into the socialist agenda that I knew that Barack Obama was going to put forward.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I I made the decision at the ballot box, but as I was
Oh
going up
wow.
to make my vote, I was torn between leaving the top of the ticket open or writing Biden in.
Oh wow.
I did choose leaving the top of the ticket open eventually,
Oh wow.
but
That's a story.
Biden was more. I'm from a union house. Biden was more in line with everything that I grew up believing in
Right.
and everything my parents told me to believe in.
Right. Right. And I think that's a huge part of the guy's appeal. So I mean that would explain why he's leading. I mean, I think that again, I think he just needs to be quiet for about a year and then just take it and then let Trump roast him for touching little girls.
Well, to be fair, Shapiro said the same thing about Trump and his Twitter account. Just
Wait,
shut
what do
up.
you mean?
Just shut up for the next year, and you'll walk away to re-election.
No, I think he's right about that too. I mean, I think he's right about that too. I think Trump definitely talks too much. That's not going to happen with Trump though. Trump is
No.
not going to not say anything. Like you'd have to be, I mean, really, you'd have to like not have seen this guy, not have known who this guy was, at all in order to think that he's going to shut up. It's just not possible.
Well, there's one more candidate news piece that I want to hit in here, and this will probably just be a quick hitter, but it might go away as well. Before I get into the three questions I always ask my guest on 2020 Watch, and that is that Elizabeth Warren, husband, would you like a beer, Elizabeth Warren,
Yeah. Pocahontas.
threw a boa on full of rainbow colors
Oh
and
yeah.
decided to walk in the Pride Parade.
Oh my God. So that was embarrassing. That GIF is embarrassing because that woman is so old. Also, like, you're not okay. Here's the thing. I'm gonna go into the gay pride thing a little bit too.
Go
Right?
ahead.
That's not for straight people. I don't understand why. Like, I got asked the other day. Somebody was like, "When's the pride parade?" I'm like, "Why would I know that? I'm not going." Like, it's not for me. It's not for me, and I don't have to go to it in order to show that I support you being gay. Like, I don't care if somebody's gay, but I don't feel like I need to do that. And so when political pundits or politicians go around and like that was embarrassing. She's just kind of trying to pander. I think it's somebody said the other day, it's the Pander Express. you know, like it's honestly a little bit insulting. It's kind of like the same way to it's kind of like Hillary Clinton and hot sauce.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, like that's what I see that as. And she's like, woo, like giving people high fives. Like, what are you doing, lady? Like, what are you doing?
Well,
I don't get it.
you said that it's not for straight people, and I understand this. I know that there's the category out there for allies. I understand that.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, the people that should be marching in the parade, if they're so proud of it, should be the people that are
Right.
proud of being gay, not the people who are trying to support them. They should be. Warren should have been one of the people on the sidelines that was
On the
giving the
sideline.
high five back.
Right. Right. Exactly. Like if I saw a GIF of her like on like the sidelines and somebody came up to her and gave her a high five, I would have a completely different perception of that situation.
Yeah.
But like it's very obviously pandering, and it's like, oh God, that woman. Like, here's the thing about Elizabeth Warren that bothers me is she's not stupid.
No.
Like that, she's not a stupid woman, but she's doing these things that make her look like such a fool. And I'm like, yo, if she would just kind of like snap back, take the fact that she's not Native American on the chin, you know what I'm saying, and just kind of rock with that. I think that she actually went on. She went on The Breakfast Club, which is the same show that Hillary Clinton was on when she said that she has hot socks in her bag. And I used to listen to that show all the time, but I kind of, as I've changed my opinions, I can't really listen to it as much anymore. But I did see a clip with Elizabeth Warren on it, and Charlemagne the God said something straight up asked her, like, why did you pretend to be Native American? You know what I mean? Like, and she's just like, well, it's just what I grew up believing. It's what I grew up believing, and I know about my family from my mom and my pop. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I don't not believe her when she says that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that like a lot, because I know a lot of white folks that I grew up with, especially like I used to date a lot of white girls back in my day, and a lot of them would say that they were part Native American, and I think a lot of white people say that to their kids and whatever to make them feel less white for some reason. I think it's another layer of the apologizing for being white. And I always thought that it was really dumb because it's like, newsflash, you probably aren't. And so I don't know. I think that Elizabeth Warren, like, she kind of just keeps like she's punching herself almost a little bit. And I know that she's smarter than this. So I'm a little disappointed, to be honest. Like, she could be like a Democrat that like makes me think that the Democrats aren't as crazy, but she's just going straight up crazy train. You know who I would like to see run is Kristen Sinema, because she's actually reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you bring that up about white people that tell their kids that they have Native American. We were talking about that, my dad and I. My mom's side of the family, we can't get away with that because we can actually trace our family back a couple generations to straight off the boat. I think it's like 3 generations before me. But
oh, no shit.
I'm very, very mixed on my dad's side. It's mostly European, but he did tell me one day that I do have some Native American back in my background.
Really?
But the difference between Warren and myself is I don't make an identity out of it.
yeah, exactly. Well, have you ever done 23andMe?
No, I have not done that. I'm a little wary about the DNA collecting out of it. It's the
Right.
tinfoil on me, but
Well, so you know what's funny about that is actually you should be because they can like if you do have your DNA in a database like that and somebody like you're convicted of or suspected of committing a crime,
Hmm.
they can go to 23andMe and be like, "Hey, you have this guy's DNA." Like they can do that.
Good to know. Well, I've got three regular questions that I always ask my guests during this segment before we move out of the 2020 watch. And they
Sweet.
all talk about who's going to be on the stage at the end of all of this standing against
Oh,
the Donald.
okay.
So, educated opinion first off, educated guess based on statistics, based on the reality of what's going on out there. Who do you think makes it to the end based on what we've seen over the last few weeks and who's in the field right now to the debate stage as the Democrat nominee currently?
Oh my God. Um, geez. It's tough because I really think that Biden is a gaffe machine,
Hmm.
but I think that he does have the best chance, and I do think he has the best chance of beating Trump out of everyone.
I think that might be
So
part of why he's doing so well too.
yeah. So you know, as much as I'd like to like say that it's anyone other than Biden, I really do think that it will be as long as he continues going and doesn't die.
Well, you've got two more questions to get into that. So, next question that I always ask. Now, the third question is entertainment value. So keep that in mind. You're going to be answering a different question in a couple minutes. But
Okay.
who do you want to see non-entertainment value get to the end? Who does
Who do I
Chris want
want
to
to
see
see
at the
again?
end?
I'd like to see Elizabeth Warren versus Trump
Okay.
because he would just roast the fuck out of her.
Okay.
I would love to see that.
Now, pure entertainment value, no statistics, no any serious thought into this, completely pure entertainment value. Who do you want to see at the end?
Yeah, I would go again with Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris just because she's so uncharismatic that it would just be like night and day. It'd just be watching Hillary Clinton versus Trump again. But yeah, entertainment value definitely in Elizabeth Warren because he would just Pocahontas, 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 and just roast the fuck out of her for pandering and doing all that stuff.
See, it's interesting. I kind of flip flop on that last question when I ask
Yeah.
myself the question because I know Kamala Harris has never run against a Republican for any office she's ever held in her life.
Yep. He's all California.
But, I've got a little bit of a rich East Coast idea, and I would love to see two New Yorkers scream at each other on the debate stage in New York accents. So, Bernie Trump just is
Yeah,
very
that would be
entertainment
kind
to me.
of that would be kind of funny actually. Well, that's like I mean, that's like an SNL skit come to life, man. It really is.
This sucks. Now we have to get dark.
Oh. All right. Let's
Ah,
go.
so
Let's do it.
this past week, our next two topics are quick hitters. So I know we're going a little long on time right now, but this will be kind of quick.
Hey man, I'm having fun.
It is, and this is great. I love the fact that you've been on this show, and you will be coming back. I hope.
Oh, definitely. You're gonna come on my show.
Absolutely. So, this past week, there was yet another mass shooting in Virginia this time. A municipal employee came in and opened fire in a crowded municipal building. Now, of course, David Hogg made his rounds and saying how many is enough. And there was a little bit of talk, of course, and gun control to this, but this mostly fell to the wayside again, partially because it didn't fit the narrative. But statistically, this was the deadliest shooting of 2019 thus far. What have you seen on this so far?
I just saw. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, there was a pretty bad shooting. I think it was like Was it 19 people?
19 people, I believe, injured, 12,
Yeah,
12
12
killed.
killed. Okay, so there was that, and then it was done with a handgun,
Hmm.
which is what you're talking about. Doesn't fit the narrative of like assault rifles, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But even like Virginia Tech had a shooting. I think it was 2003 or something like that. That was carried out with a handgun, and up until then, up until this past weekend, that was the deadliest shooting
Yeah.
in U.S. history. So that one doesn't fit the narrative either. And I always bring that one up when people start talking about assault rifles and things. Is well, what about Virginia Tech? That was done with a handgun. Do you really just want to ban guns? Is that what's going on? You know, and I think so I think that that's interesting. Obviously it's super sad when somebody is disgruntled and kills people at their job.
Hmm.
Um, I do know what you mean by it kind of going away, because people are trying to say that all they want to do is ban assault rifles, and so they want to turn a blind eye to this. But it's strange that I really haven't seen that many people who I know are anti-gun talk about this at all.
Right.
And I think it did get really swept under the rug. You mentioned David Hogg too, and first of all, that kid fucking annoys the shit out of me. But uh, the reason why, the thing that annoys me the most is, I don't know if you're familiar with what happened with Kyle Kashup a couple weeks ago. How like they found that Kyle Kashup is like the other kid, the right wing kid from
I'm familiar with who he is, but no, I haven't heard anything about what he
Oh,
did.
okay.
Fill me in.
So this is great. So he got caught a couple weeks ago, and like conservative Twitter was like all buzz, especially Black conservative Twitter, because a couple weeks ago something came out that like he had written like a bunch of racist stuff when he was 16 or 15 or something like that, like calling people niggers or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, this kid was like the pro-gun version of David Hogg, and so he was like kind of the counterpoint. And now he's almost lost all credibility because he said some dumb shit in high school. So I'm super upset with that kid right now, because he he should have just. I mean, I guess he apologized or something like that. But like now, all we're hearing is like David Hogg, and we don't even get to hear the other side of it. And I really like the fact that there was kind of the dynamic there.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's kind of like lost all credibility, especially with Black conservatives. Um, yeah, I mean, I think we need. I don't know. Like, I think it's clearly a sad thing. I don't. Every time this kind of stuff happens, people who do hear about it who are anti-gun are like, "Oh, why do you need one of those things?" And like, blah, people shouldn't have to have deadly weapons. And I think that they really don't realize that, like, when you take away guns, people will just stab each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think that, like, just because someone is crazy and decides to murder people doesn't mean that I should have to lose my rights. That's always going to be my stance with that stuff.
Well,
Always.
this happened in a municipal building, and that's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I just went over. I got a registration ticket in my truck because I forgot to renew the registration on it. I just went over, renewed the registration. I went down to the courthouse, the local courthouse to me, to get the form to fill out to dispute the citation, because now it's registered before the court date. I can do that in this state. As soon as I went into the building, I got a pocket knife, and I had to disarm myself to everything, because I have to go through a metal detector to get into the building.
Yeah.
Anytime you're in a municipal building, you're disarmed.
Yeah.
It is a soft target. And I didn't have to do that to get into the building, oddly enough. But I did have to do it to get into the clerk of court's office.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody could have walked into the front of that building and looked at the sign and laughed at the sign while carrying that 44 pistol with extended mags like the shooter carried out over here. Anybody could have done that. You're obviously not going to carry your AR-15 strapped to your back into that building, but to have your handgun tucked into the back pocket or into the waistband of your pants somewhere is something you're going to do. And that's something that we stop talking about when we talk about this, and especially something that doesn't fit the narrative. This is a municipal building, and Virginia is a very left-leaning place, so I have to imagine their laws are stricter. That had to be a soft target. I can't confirm that because I didn't look up to it, but if it's anything like here, that was a soft, gun-free zone target. And that's the thing that never gets brought up in this conversation, is the gun-free zone.
Well, did this guy had actually don't know if that's a thing in Virginia. Can you do concealed carry in Virginia?
Yes, there is concealed carry, but you can't do it on a government building.
Okay. Well, so this is like what I think you're right. People don't talk about the fact that, like, people who are going to do that are going to break the laws regardless. There are laws around these things. And I don't think that people understand that, like, you can't, like, it's not like you're going to stop things by having more laws. You're not going to stop illegal activity by having more laws.
Mm-hmm.
Really what you need to do is just raise people to not be crazy, I guess. And I don't really know what the circumstances this guy had. It seems like he was like disgruntled or something like that. Maybe he didn't have a family. Maybe he, and I'm not making excuses for him or whatever, but sometimes people do fucked up things, and evil exists in the world, and these are things that, like, you're not going to mitigate that by taking other people's freedoms. You're actually going to probably make it worse.
Yeah. And again, if you're in a government building, yes, you're not allowed to be armed. But
Yeah.
what happens now if somebody can shoot back? That's
Right.
always been my question: is are
Right.
these things going to happen in places where people can shoot back,
Hmm.
or are they just going to keep going out in places where you know that everybody is unarmed, or at least all the people that are law abiding?
Well, I mean, I would say that they probably aren't. I mean, like people who do that, in my opinion, if you're going to go anywhere and shoot up a bunch of people, you're a coward.
Hmm.
Like that's you're a coward. And so most of those people, like even when the shooting happened in New Zealand at the mosque a couple months ago,
Yeah.
there was a second. People don't talk about this at all, which is fucking crazy. But there was a second mosque that was targeted, and there was a guy who had a gun who shot his gun twice in the direction of the shooters, and they ran away.
Yeah, he shot back.
Yeah. So yeah, no, they would. I don't think that people will go into places like this, if they know that people are armed. You know, like you're way less likely. Like, I mean, yeah, I don't think that these people are really thinking about that kind of thing. If somebody pulls out their gun and they say, "Hey, get the fuck out of here," they're gonna be gone. They're only, excuse me, they're only trying to kill innocent and unarmed people. And so
Yeah, and
I
like
think an
I
armed
say,
society is a safe.
they're going the extra mile to make sure that you're unarmed when you're going in to
Right.
talk to the clerk of court. I mean, I was wearing a pair of harness cowboy boots. I don't know if you're familiar with biker boots at all, but
Mm-mm.
they've got the adornment on the side, the harness that goes over with a metal buckle on each side.
Mhm.
That set off the metal detector, and I had to go and get one
Oh,
because of that. So I mean, they are going the extra
yeah,
mile to make sure that somebody's unarmed going into here. And now the person goes into that knows that this is there, and oh well, nobody in here is going to be armed, except maybe the
yeah,
deputies that are running around there because it's a courthouse. But still, I mean, for the most part, you're going to get quite the massacre before someone can come running out like that.
yeah, yeah.
Now, of course, we don't know what the shooter's motives are, and that's one of the most unfortunate things that I see in a lot of these shootings that have happened up until recently, because I know that they've been managing to take a lot of people alive. But the shooter was killed in a shootout with authorities outside of the municipal building. So, short of them finding a manifesto somewhere that Ben Shapiro's not going to read on the air, we're never going to know what caused this guy to go off like this. So,
Well, I mean, like I said, evil exists in the world. I mean, I think, currently we're seeing a lot of it, and
mhm.
people are just kind of cracking. We're gonna have things that are evil that are gonna happen, and I think that that's something that particularly the left doesn't really want to accept. They think they can legislate their way out of evil, and I think that that's also something that appeals to me, in my opinion. That's what makes conservatism and conservatives appeal more to me, as they recognize the realities that evil exists, and sometimes we're probably not going to know that guy's motive. To be honest with you, we just know that he was pissed off and that he wanted to see the world burn, like they say in the Dark Knight.
That movie's on Netflix. I want to watch that again because I
Is
haven't
it?
seen it since it was new.
Oh man, I haven't watched it in a long time. You know what's funny? I went back and I watched Batman Begins after I watched that movie, and it's
Yeah.
so boring.
That's
Like
on
I
Netflix
can't
too
watch
right now, I think. Yeah, it is.
it.
We were
Really?
talking about that yesterday.
Nice. Well, maybe now I know what I'm doing after this.
Well, we've got one more quick hitter here, so let's talk about this here. And this is something we've been talking about on this show for the last couple weeks, of course. And this goes all the way back to the famous sex strike that Alyssa Milano tried to
Oh
impose
God.
on the rest of the country. Uh, There's been a lot of talk about production in this country moving across and going over to Georgia or other places like that that have a similarly warm climate to California, but have a lower tax burden. Ironically, the celebrities are going to go to these places and try and get into government and change the tax codes on this. But for right now, it's still kind of a nice little tax haven for the studios. This past week, we've seen calls from several different celebrities and even the Disney Corporation itself that say that they are not going to film in places like Georgia or Alabama or Ohio or any place else that has these laws on the books so long as they have an anti abortion law on the books. I heard the first person say that I will not be going to Georgia if they have these laws on the books, and I can't speak for Georgia, but I've got this feeling that the Georgia natives that put this law into place just looked up and said, "Bye."
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I talked about this too. It's like some of the virtue signaling coming from Hollywood. Also, to be honest with you, there's another layer to this where I don't think many people are really speaking of because they're like don't really like want to talk about spirits or whatever. But the obvious evils of Disney are just so blatant right now. You need to be able to kill your babies before we can move there. And you know what? All right, let me rephrase that. You need to be able to kill your fetuses because people are like, oh, you conservative, you're calling it a baby, and it's not a baby, you dumb conservatives. Okay, fine. Fetus, whatever. It's still a life. That's the point. And so you know, the fact that Disney is sitting there and Netflix too is hopping on this train talking about we're not going to film in these places if they don't allow women to kill their unborn.
Well, that's going to take
Like,
down one of their most successful shows right there.
wait, which one?
Insatiable is set and filmed in Georgia.
Oh, I don't know anything about that show because that's how much I care about Hollywood. Seriously, and you know what the funny thing is? It's because we were talking about this at the very beginning of the show. It's like I unplugged a long time ago, so when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, okay, like I'm not watching your shit anyway for the most part. Like I watch some of the Marvel stuff
Yeah.
because I like that, um, and that's Disney. But I don't care about Star Wars anymore, dude. I'm not gonna lie. And like what am I really? Excuse me. What am I really watching on Netflix? Not that much. I pay $15 a month for Netflix, and I never use it. Like, so, okay. It's like, and then it's like we have this whole alternative media stuff spinning up where it's like most of the media that I get is through people who are like me, who are making their own stuff and who are engaging with others in conversations that the media, the mainstream media won't allow us to have or even think about having. So, okay, sure, Disney, go. That's just going to open up the floodgates for independent filmmakers who happen to think that a life is a life, right? To make their own shit in Georgia and Alabama. Okay, get the fuck out of here then. That's how I feel about it.
Well, I mean, of course, Disney is going to want to make sure that they can only film in places that allow abortion because, I mean, they aborted the Star Wars series.
Yeah, yeah. I
That's
mean,
still sitting in stillborn status at this point.
absolutely. I mean, the funniest thing to me though was the Sophie Turner stuff when she goes, "I don't want to film in any states that don't allow abortion." And then I think it was like the Sky News or something was talking to her,
Mm-hmm.
and she goes, the reporter goes, "Well, what didn't you just finish filming in Northern Ireland where they completely ban abortion like
Yeah.
100%?" And she goes, "Oh, well, thank God we're done." It's like, no, that's just you fucking virtue signaling because this just shows how we should not be looking to celebrities for our moral compass. This woman does not even know about the geography and the politics of the place that she just spent the past 10 years filming. So, and she's so ignorant that she's going to create a statement that literally contradicts the past 10 years of her career. It's ridiculous, man. And didn't Disney just finish doing Aladdin and they just like did a bunch of filming in like places in the Middle East where like they ban abortion too and like what?
That's not just that; it's where they throw gays off the top of buildings.
Well, that too, yeah. I mean, I did see an article in the New York Times. I think it was talking about how after Sophie Turner said this, and then the attention got brought to Northern Ireland. There's like a whole like activist group in Northern Ireland that's like, we want our abortions, we want our abortions, and so like now there's kind of Sophie Turner accidentally like drew attention to the like pro-abortion cause in Northern Ireland. And I don't know if you know this either. In the southern portion of Ireland, they actually did legalize abortion this past year. They started performing abortions in Ireland in January 1st, 2019. I think it's like something like after 12 weeks of pregnancy, you can't get one anymore, but up to 12 weeks, you can. So,
Well, I mean, divorce was just voted on as legal in Ireland in, I think it was '03.
oh yeah,
Because
yeah.
I
I mean,
remember hearing a Dennis Leary comedy act in '04 that he was talking about it happening last year.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the Republic of Ireland, right? That's not Northern Ireland. That's not the UK.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so
But
they
still,
have like completely different laws. They're like not beholden to the UK or whatever, but they're like they're going increasingly further left over there, whereas like Northern Ireland is staying on right.
they're staying Catholic essentially.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Well, it's funny to me that this is all coming up right now. Because while Obama was still president, I was talking with my cousin. I've got an absolute complete neocon worshiper cousin, and I
Hmm.
actually used to live in his house. He owns a small business not too far from where I live. He was getting to the point where he needed an extra hand on site to help him get his business launched up, and I moved to the area and I helped him get that launched until he got
Hmm.
to a point where he needed to hire somebody full time, and that was where we came differently because I didn't want to do that job all the time and
Hmm.
get paid for it. But he's a very neocon person, very, very neocon, worships at the feet of neocons, thinks that Iraq was justified, thinks that we need to be back in the Middle East, that kind of person.
Yeah, yeah, got it.
But we were having the discussion here, and we both agreed to the fact that at the time, there was no reason that we should have been even thinking about, or making any news about abortion or gay marriage. That was the other one that came up there. We shouldn't be fighting these battles right now because
Hmm.
we were in the point, our economy was still hemorrhaging jobs. Nobody
Hmm.
had a job, wages were stagnant, and the economy was still in the tank. We should
Yeah.
fix the economy first before we start talking about these things. The economy's
Well,
fixed,
the economy's fixed, so that's why we're talking about these things. I
theoretically.
mean, yeah, yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think that like, well, you mentioned gay marriage too. I think that I just like little 2 cents on that. I don't understand. I still don't understand why gays wanted to get married. I don't understand why you want the fucking government involved in your marriage. I'm completely libertarian on marriage. I don't
Mhm.
think that the government should be involved at all. I think it's between two people and God. I don't really even understand when non-religious people want to get married because it's a religious institution.
Yeah.
So I don't understand the point of that.
Oh, they want the
And I
tax break.
Right, and I think that that's really I think that that's really stupid, and I don't think that the government should really be like, if you want to give people tax breaks for having kids, sure, okay, but like marriage is a religious thing. It's not about it's not secular in my opinion at all, and I don't think that it makes sense for non-religious people or gay people to get married at all. And I really don't. But I do think that in what you're talking about when it comes to talking about abortion because we need to fix the economy. I think that makes sense. I think that like yeah we have other things that we need to think about. I think that the reason all of this stuff is coming up now though is just because of the fact that we have appointed a couple conservative judges, to the
Oh,
Supreme
that's
Court,
true.
and
Yeah.
these states, they think that at least Alabama also, like especially Alabama, I think that they can directly challenge Roe v. Wade, which in my opinion is a terrible court decision. I think it's just as bad as Dred Scott, but
Yeah.
I do think that this is not the way to do it. I don't think that it's going to work that way because I don't think Kavanaugh and what was the other judge's name? Fuck, I forget.
Roberts.
Yes. I don't think that they're going to overturn Roe v. Wade. I don't think that they would vote to. So I think this is bad strategy. But we'll see.
Well, and that's the thing too. Is the big worry was the fact that Kavanaugh was going to be appointed to the court, and he was going to get up there and he was going to overturn Roe versus Wade. That's part of the reason that they went out and Me Too'd him, to try and make sure that he didn't get up there. Part of it, of course, was to try and spin the Senate election in the Democrats' favor by saying, well, if we can hold it off until the end of this, we can get Democrats on there and block his confirmation that way. But
Yeah.
that was the story that they were spinning, was the fact that he was going to overturn it. There have been 6 cases that have made it to the Supreme Court thus far that challenged Roe versus Wade, or at least tried to get it reopened.
Mm-hmm.
It requires 4 justices
Mm-hmm.
to even hear a case. They have to vote to hear it. They don't hear every case
Yeah,
that comes to
exactly.
them. It
Yeah,
takes
right,
4
right.
justices to even hear it.
Right.
Kavanaugh's voted no on all 6 cases.
Yeah.
He's
There
voted,
you
we
go.
don't want to hear it.
There you go. So it's not gonna. So people freaking out about, oh, they're gonna overturn Roe v. Wade. Maybe they should listen to your show some more because they don't really get it.
Well,
I
everyone
don't think
should
that
listen
that's
to
in
more of my
danger.
show.
I wish it was in danger, to be honest, because I think that should be up to the states. I don't think my main opinion on abortion is that it's not a political issue at all.
No.
It is a moral issue 100%. And when you try to use the Supreme Court to shove down your idea of morality onto the rest of the country, then we have a problem. And that's what happened with this decision in the first place. When the pendulum swings one way and it's going to swing back the other way. And then the Democrats are going to be like, oh, what happened? We've just been using the legislative and the judicial powers to bludgeon people with our morality for the past like 80 years. Why is it happening to us? It's like, of course it's going to happen to you. You can't do it like that.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, so many Congress people say, "Well, we have the legislature, we have the opinions of our people. The people want abortion here, so pass a legislation.
Right.
There's an idea.
Right.
Don't use the court to do it. Go pass the
Right.
legislation.
Right. 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 Exactly. Exactly.
And then see if you get reelected next year.
Right. I mean, honestly, the thing about the abortion stuff too, it's like I don't understand. It's really hard for me to understand at this point because as somebody who thought that he was pro-choice until I started actually fucking researching, because I used to be like the beta male that was like, oh, it's her body, her choice, and it's like, no, absolutely, it is fucking not. It's not. First of all, it's not her body. Second of all, no, it's not just a woman's choice to be able to commit like what's essentially murder on something that would be like if I got somebody pregnant and they were like, I'm going to abort this kid, that's half my kid too. I can't get pregnant. Like the thing about like these women is like your problem is not with anything but your own biology and your creator. You know, this whole idea that it's like, oh, I should be able to like fuck whoever I want without consequences. Because that's essentially what people are asking for right now. And if you're saying that, oh, it's to make people safe, like just in case they get rape or incest or whatever, from what I understand, that stuff was always legal in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
Like if a mother is like has an ectopic pregnancy or something like that, that is also legal because you can't. You're not going to. Nobody's going to kill. First of all, if an ectopic pregnancy, both the baby and the mother are going to die if it goes to term.
Yeah, that's not viable.
Right. So everybody knows those things, but it's like most realistically, if people actually look at the numbers, a lot of abortions are not performed because of those things. They're performed because of convenience, economics, things like that. Saying I'm poor is not a reason to abort a child. I'm sorry. It's just not because you probably should have put on the doc before you went and got the $500 abortion. I don't understand.
Well, yeah, there's so many other things that you can do before you're sitting in that doctor's office with your legs up.
Right, exactly. And it's honestly sickening to me that people can justify that. It's so strange and bizarre that like we would even saying things like oh, it's not a person. It's like how the fuck do you think you started? You know what I mean? Like every single one of us started that way. Mm-hmm. It's so bizarre and like. It's honestly gross to me that we could think of that way. Like, oh, that's not a person. Yeah, well, if left alone, it's going to become one. If anything, it's incipient. Yeah,
so absolutely.
I don't know. It's really bizarre to me that the abortion stuff really bothers me. I don't think that I don't think that it's moral at all. I think it's crazy.
Well, that was quite the way to round out this show.
Yeah. So I get passionate about the abortion stuff because it's nuts to me.
Absolutely, and I mean, you should be passionate about anything that is important to you. Especially, I get passionate about domestic policy, and I scream at the radio when I hear people talking about it. I understand that entirely.
Yeah, dude, get you.
But I've got 87 minutes on the clock here, so I think it's time I think it's time for us to run through the outro here. So the last question that I ask every guest that has ever been on this show is always the same. Politics is such a divisive topic. It makes so many people angry. It ends friendships, and for whatever reason, it always turns out negative. So we always try to end the show on a positive note. So please, Chris, tell us about a hobby that you have that has nothing to do with your work or your politics. Could be
that's easy.
Well, yeah, there you go.
That's easy. Video games, man. I'm a '90s kind of nerd, so I love video games and comic books, but I'm mostly a gamer. Mm-hmm. And I play a lot of fighting games. So I love to go to local tournaments. I will be going to EVO this year again to compete in Mortal Kombat 11, and I think I'm going to be playing Soul Calibur and Super Smash Brothers. So I play a ton of video games. Like I was saying to you before we got on here, like you should see my game collection. It's pretty dumb. I have way too many games than I will ever be able to beat in my lifetime. But that's definitely my main hobby, video games, for sure.
I want to touch on something that we talked about here before we get out of here as well, because you were talking about independent content, and I thought about it at the time, but we got into another distraction here. You're talking about new media, alternative media, and basically the masses rising up and taking over the media, and the big companies trying to stop that. Mm-hmm. And you're into gaming, obviously, and you had Netflix, and you barely use it. Have you ever seen Video Game High School?
I've heard of it.
That was a completely independent studio that was just a bunch of kids that got around and decided to make a TV series. And it was so good, it actually got picked up by a studio. So
that's awesome. Yeah, no, I have heard of it. I've had friends recommend it to me.
You should watch it. It's great.
You know what? I probably will after having this conversation.
And absolutely, it was great to see Joanna Brady before she got anorexic for Quantico.
Whoa, I don't even know who that is.
She was the blonde girl in Quantico.
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, it was an
I'm
ABC
so.
show about the FBI and the FBI training program.
Oh, got it. Oh, that sounds interesting, actually.
That's on Netflix too, by the way.
Shit. Well, now I have a huge watch list. Thanks, man.
But yeah, I mean, to see that was again an independent studio that it was basically a bunch of kids making YouTube
Yeah,
videos 5 minutes at a time,
that's
and it turned
badass,
into a
man.
series. It was great, and it was very well done. We could see a lot of this. It's not just going to be news that's going to rise up in the independents. It's going to we
Yeah.
could see entertainment go up there. We look at all the music that's on YouTube right now.
Yep. Yep.
People that play 7 instruments and know how to mix it
Oh
down in
yeah.
studio.
Yeah, man. Well, that's what I was saying. That's why I think it's really funny that these Hollywood studios like we're pulling out. It's like okay, great. There's so many people that are not you
And
that create content
they're
now.
having original ideas. They're not rebooting a
Right.
40-year-old series either.
Right. Exactly.
Well, that's what I have for the day. I want to thank the audience for coming in and watching the show. And if you're new here, remember, if you want to finish the conversation with me, you can always find me. That is at edsblog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I over on Twitter. Or you can email me, edsblogtwitter@gmail.com. We will finish out the conversation. You can always comment below. We always comment back over here. Or if you want to finish the conversation with Chris, tell us where they can find you.
Oh yeah, you can find me on Twitter at real Mr. Behavior. That's real MR Behavior. Yeah, I love Twitter, so I'm on that a lot. And you can also find me on YouTube. I have YouTube series Locs Takes, LOCSTAKES. And then that's also the name of my podcast, which you can find on iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And we'll get Ed on the show very shortly.
And all of those will be linked in the description below. And while you're looking at that description to go find those links, you've just passed by the subscribe button, so why don't you hit that subscribe button? And that thumbs up button that tells YouTube and BitChute what people should be watching on their platform. Remember again, we are on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, so make sure you go over there and check that out and subscribe over there as well. Again, if you want something else added to the roster, just let me know and I will apply for it and we'll get it added. And of course, if you are over on iTunes, please leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the charts. Ed's World is partnered proudly with the Freedom Scoop Media Group. All of the videos that you see here, including my solo series, are uploaded to Freedom Scoop every day. We are currently looking for writers, so email me if you have an interest in writing or know somebody that has an interest in writing, and I'll get you over to the editor-in-chief and the chief producer, and we'll figure out what we need to do there. That is freedomscoop.com. As we always say over on this channel, and as we talked about in the beginning of this particular episode, never ever take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusion. Oh, I just messed up my own outro line. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Chris, you have last word.
I'm gonna echo that. Find all the facts, draw your own conclusions, and there are no leaders on Twitter, only followers.
Take care, everyone.